Hi, everyone, and welcome to this session where we will be discussing how to build and deploy an architecture to support resilient business operations. This is Enrique Lopez-Tello from Oracle, and I work out of the strategic client group. And talking about building resilient business operations, the first word that comes to your mind is disruptions. They come to you in different sizes and with different frequency, more and more frequently lately. As you see in the screen on the left-hand side, there is a big size of disruptions that everyone knows about that create like a big tsunami in your operations. But there are a bunch of other ones that are difficult to predict that can last, for a longer period of time, actually. Some of them are a shorter period of time that continuously hit your business more and more frequently. And so the question is, how much in terms of business value is this going to represent for you if you do nothing about this and try to maintain your business operations as they are? And McKinsey tells you this is going to be very expensive. You need to think about an alternative here to survive in the P&L. So I guess the first question that we need to try to answer when we think about rethinking business operations is this resilience need a need that is structural or tactical? Is a problem that will be fixed anytime soon, these disruptions that continuously happen? And what I want to show you in this slide is an example that they will tell you at least one of the reasons why we believe that this is a new phenomenon that will stay here, right, for a few years. What you have on the left-hand side is the supply chain network of one of our OEMs, Dell computers. And you see there, when you consider the suppliers network, tier 1 and tier 2, they are running approximately 5,000 suppliers. On the right-hand side, you have Lenovo. They build, laptops, and they have obviously more things, and they have these about 4,000 different suppliers in tier 1 and tier 2. Both companies share different industry segments where they are coming a bunch of different suppliers that provide products to both, right? Components, either semiconductor manufacturers, software providers, and so forth. As a consequence, almost half of that install base in the network, that base of suppliers, 2,000, they are shared, they are common. And this is only Dell and Lenovo. Imagine the complete high-tech ecosystem and the piece of that ecosystem that your own company shares with that ecosystem. It's a very big spaghetti. It's very difficult to untangle. It's very difficult to, it took us decades to create this global infrastructure of suppliers, and most probably will take some time, regardless of the new policies of reshoring or coming back with manufacturing to particular regions. This network will be there for a long number of years. And any disruption that happens to any one of those nodes will affect simultaneously to several companies, and you don't need necessarily to be the biggest one for that supplier. So with that said, there is a clear interest in all the supply chain leaders around the globe of building up that business operations resilience. And the first thing that we need to notice is that building that resilience in your operations is not necessarily IT related only. In fact, I just listed here a few bullets or actions that those supply chain leaders are taking to increase that resilience of their operations in supply chain. One of them, obviously, is to identify key components and develop dual sourcing. For instance, they review the level of commonality in the portfolio. Using design, the more common parts, the biggest is the number of common parts that you use in your products. You reduce the risk of having problems with particular components. You should evaluate your inventory levels in terms of allowing for more a bigger caution to compensate those disruptions. You should understand if your distribution network is properly positioned to support these kind of disruptions globally, and so forth. Together with that, we do have an opportunity from Oracle to help you with what we call digital planning. And what is that? Well, that is a way of increasing the visibility of those disruptions, increasing those problems coming to you, the visibility of those problems coming to you, and understanding what else can you do to maintain your business target. Let me show you very briefly what we mean by this digital planning approach that McKinsey, for instance, and other analysts are pushing forward, like a concept that most of the supply chain heads are trying to enable. So you basically have your company is operating in an industry ecosystem. And that industry ecosystem, as I explained before, is shared by other competitors that you have in that ecosystem, together with your suppliers and customers. In that ecosystem that is deployed globally, there are changes in regulation. There are problems with operations. A particular seaport could be congested, or a particular road could be having a problem because of wildfire in California. Or, different natural disasters could be affecting your routes, right? It could be social unrest that just broke up in particular countries where some of those suppliers are located, and so forth. So you have a source of events that will affect your future performance coming from that ecosystem. The other two sources where you have events generated that could affect your future performance are your partner network, right? So your contract manufacturer, your key suppliers, your distributors, the institutions that you collaborate with in order to do new product introduction or product development, and so forth. And your internal network, right? Your own operations, right? Your own, sales may change their vision on demand. You could have internal manufacturing operations that have problems or difficulties. And all those events or quality problems could come from either external or internal nodes. So all those events are generated and could affect your performance. So you need to aggregate all that data and consolidate in one place so you can contextualize out of that noise which piece of that data is really relevant for you. If a truck is going to be late, is that truck having a part that is critical for you? Is bringing materials that you have overstock on and you don't care? So once that information is contextualized, you need to be able to translate the risk information, like bad weather in the tropical, to something that you can consume also in the same way that we were doing with a truck delay. How that is done, we will be talking about that later on. But you need to translate all that data, all that events flow that is generated in those three regions, in those three areas, into something that you can consume, you can contextualize, and once you understand the context, you need to figure out your alternatives. You have now new constraints, and you need to figure out doing what-if analysis. What are your alternatives? What is your best response? How is your network to respond to this series of accumulated disruptions? Once you select that response, and this is what we can help with in terms of functionality ready to consume in our products, then you need to deploy that response in one single return. Ideally, one single return. So your infrastructure in systems and applications is able to deliver that response almost immediately to your contract manufacturers, key vendors, key suppliers, excuse me, distributors, and hey guys, this is the new plan of action. This is the new plan of record. This is the new demand. I changed this order by this one. So all those actions need to be shipped to the network as a response to those disruptions that we were having during that period of time. This is what we are talking when we are explaining that we want to develop a resilient business operations architecture, right? And this is what we will be discussing a little bit more in detail now. Now, when you're talking about that concept, we are going to be very clear here on what we propose as an alternative, as a solution here. On the left-hand side, you have Oracle's alternative to do end-to-end planning, right? So everything starts with a plan of record, a plan that you created that is top-down from a strategic planning to, the fiscal year plan, even the monthly plan, each of them nested in each other, right? From all different time horizons for all different line of businesses, integrated. This is the end-to-end planning proposition from Oracle, Integrated Business Planning and Execution, IBPX. And then you have a way of monitoring that plan, right? That plan execution. Right? When you send that plan to your network, your line of business, the C-level, is engaged protecting the KPIs of the company, right? So the CIO is taking a look of the P&L projection, the balance sheet, and the cash flow, and trying to monitor the projections in those areas to make sure that the company goes to where the company wants to go. And then the line of businesses, each one of them, the engineering, marketing, supply chain, and finance, they have their own KPIs that they monitor to do exactly that, to maintain and increase the performance of your company. So what we are looking at is it possible to develop a specific processes that are monitoring those decision KPIs that are critical for your business. So we can see how all that information we were mentioning for all those events are sent into those business processes, evaluated the same way I was explaining before, generically, but now for those specific purposes, and use those processes to determine whether or not we should change pieces or the complete end-to-end plan of the company, depending on the process you are talking about and the impact that you are seeing, right? So you might think about a process that try to maintain your net profit in the company, or a process that take a look of revenue risk management to maintain the revenue that is at risk at the minimum, right? So you could optimize your opportunities to realize your revenue and so forth, right? So this is what really we believe is a practical way of deploying that resilient business operations architecture. And this is what our portfolio currently could deploy very easily for you, okay, in manufacturing specifically. So let's get an example a little bit more crystallized so we can visualize one of these examples that we can build with the current portfolio in Oracle's cloud, right? So the idea here is, again, we need to be able to do basically these three phases. Is very simple, kind of a cycle or closed loop. First of all, you are running with an optimized plan of record, right? So this is the plan that you share already with your network, and according to that plan, you are expecting some critical business targets to be met, right? And the projection of those targets is what is really critical for your business. Obviously, it depends on the persona and the process that runs underneath, right? So you're talking a person that is the CFO may enable a different business process. that, for instance, if you are talking about a supply chain head with we are going to use, for instance, as an example, how to protect the revenue at risk number. But whatever is the case, you have a set of business targets that are specific for you as a person and for that particular process. So this plan or record is being shared with the network. You let the time go, and you feed all that information, all those new events into the plan. And what our product does is it projects a new value, a new series of values through time of those KPIs, those key business targets. So you see updated the combined effect of all those disruptions that could be either risk data from outside or internal from your network. All right. Once you see the impact of that information, what we do in our solution is we work with off-the-shelf functionality provided in our applications, in our cloud, to reduce the impact or close the gap generated for those disruptions, right? And until we get comfortable with what we call a new optimized plan. And is a different workbench, different functionality that you can use depending on the exceptions that you are getting from the plan of record, so you can minimize the impact of those disruptions until a moment in time, a moment in which you decide to launch this new plan as a response to the network and interchange the old plan of record by this new optimized plan, right? So to do so, we are going to use here, or I want to introduce first another concept yet, which is this ecosystem information that we need to incorporate. And for that, I want to use an example that we developed already in our pro portfolio with a company called Everstream, using our logistics cloud. Everstream is a company that collects data on risk. There's quite a few other companies. We're working, for instance, in this example with this one, but there are more. And they collect risk data. They collect risk data on transport infrastructure, on supply and manufacturing networks, like there is accidents or communications outages, explosions, and so forth, civil unrest, and a bunch of different events from natural disasters, basically tornadoes and so forth. So they translate all that noise into information. They provide you all that risk information. Now, how do you consume this data, right? This is the bottom line, what we need to understand before going any further building that architecture I was explaining to you before, right? So I'm going to explain how do we do that in Oracle. So what we do here is the following. We pick all the orders specifically that you are working with, all of your inbound and outbound orders. And we share the route of those orders, the physical route global, with Everstream. And Everstream send to us all the risk information attached to those routes. Right? So you check on the road and say, right, this goes through Singapore harbor, and you know what? There is a congestion there that is lasting a few weeks already, or on this particular country. Right? So there is a new regulation on this complete area is under threat because there has been earthquake and operations will be disrupted for months and so forth. So they send us all that information. And what we do in Oracle is we build a machine learning AI model that incorporates that information into historical records in our data lake that is kept into your application. And we use that model to transform that risk information on consumable data. And how do we do this? Well, we translate that risk information into two pieces of data. One is new estimated time of arrival of the orders. They will be late or not, and why they will be late. And that becomes consumable. Now we are ready to discuss this particular example I was explaining to you before, this revenue risk management as one of those examples. that build resilience in operations. And that is enabled obviously by our portfolio. I just put here as a reference the elements in the platform, in the SaaS platform that we are using. But what we are doing here is the following. We keep gathering all that information using the process I just explained in the previous slide. And we incorporate all that data flow with the rest of the updates coming from the internal and your external supply network, right? So all kind of different updates that could be just updates regularly or disruptions that you don't expect. And what we do is we boil down everything into one single number, the one that you are interested on. Is how much revenue or risk does this represent for me in a combined manner, right? And we do that with off-the-shelf functionality in our portfolio. Next, what happens is we provide the capabilities to work with those new constraints. So out of that close to $1 million at risk, what can you do? For instance, this is an example of multiple examples. We have guided resolution of different type of exceptions. In this case, I'm showing you a screenshot of our one of the areas where we do what if analysis. It's called backlog order management. And what you do here, assuming that you got a bunch of different material shortages, for instance, and the capacity is limited in production, you just reshuffle the orders from the next period to this one to understand what can you build right now with the materials that you have, having in mind all those disruptions that you already know about. And what the functionality does is that you find the optimum here, right? The optimum according to the criteria that you selected. Once you are happy with that, you just reduce the amount of risk involved in the demand that you need to supply. You change that plan, right? So instead of building this order, I build this other one. Instead of using this path, I use this other one, and so forth. There are different alternatives to solve those problems. You just release the new plan to your network. You just respond to your supply chain network to all those disruptions in one single click, using again one of the components in the platform. So in essence, what you do is that cycle I was explaining quite a few times: detect, decide, and execute. And we use that example, demand at risk, right, to see how can we contextualize actual but also predicted events. Remember the risk involved in the ecosystem that we incorporated using the logistics cloud, right? And so you can contextualize all that flow of information, translate that into a single number, demand at risk, which is the one that will drive your decisions about whether or not should I deploy a new response, deploy a new plan, right? Next, what the solution does is provide you with the best option under the new constraints, right? So you have simulation, what if analysis capabilities that provide you what is my best next move. And after that, simple, click, one click, and you release the complete plan to your network. We have a specific component, the supply chain collaboration cloud, to enable the communication with your contract manufacturers, key suppliers, internally, externally. So we one click, everything released, right? So let me show you now how you look. It's one way of representing this example, this process example with a small naive demo that we built. It's very simple, but I want to visualize for you this concept in a very simple set of terms. Let's take a quick look to a simple demo on this particular example, how to control demand and risk. So you are now a persona very well defined, which is the supply chain head. And you are running with a panel record. You're going to using a few decision drivers here, like your total demand, what part of the demand is at risk, and the factory, the working capital level that you are supporting. Those are going to be the decision drivers for you to move from one path to the next. So let me show you how it looks this practically. So first of all, you can extract from the
current plan of record, you could click here and see all the details that were sent to your contract manufacturer, through key suppliers, through purchasing, distribution. That plan of record is your network is running with it and is fitting into your business plan projection. So it creates a P&L, balance sheet, and cash flow positions. So you see here how the demand is projected in different periods and what piece of it is at risk because you were not able to solve this particular number of constraints. Now, so when we can extract them after a while, imagine that one day, 1 week, 1 month went by. You could have hundreds of different unexpected events happening. The demand had changes, material shortages, bad weather in the tropical. Whatever is the case, you need to boil down to your decision whether or not is it worth for you to create a new plan of record. So you see here projected that the demand of risk has been increased. But for me, it's a red alert. And also, inventory levels in the working period of time are, they are clear stockouts. So what you do is you could take a look at the exceptions that you need to work with, and figure out whether or not the area that you selected to work in the applications in the process is the right one to do so. You could deep dive, for instance, as I was suggesting in the sample, into supply planning, customer backlog management, and work with the constraints until you optimize your plan. And so in this command center, you can see the impact of your detailed work in those applications using that particular revenue risk resilience process that we were defining. And as you see, you were able to decrease the number of exceptions. And that drove the revenue risk lower, and you make disappear the inventory levels. This is basically the point in which you need to decide whether to use supply planning through supply chain collaboration to the standard network or internal purchasing and key suppliers. With one click, you could move this optimized plan into execution as a response of all those cumulative events that you were receiving during that time period and move the optimized plan to become your new plan of record in one click.
So I guess what I want to leave you with is that this resilient business operations architecture could be enabled today by Oracle's portfolio. We have the proper products today to enable that, to build that, to enable that specifically for manufacturing operations. And we have the proper roadmap also. So the key question that Gartner was pointing out in this quote, many supply chain leaders struggle to identify what is most important and what are the best actions to take. We know how to help you with answering that particular question when it comes to tackle disruptions going forward. Okay, and with that, I thank you a lot for your time, and I hope you like the presentation. If you want to keep connected, send me an email or Slack, and I will be more than glad to answer you back. Thank you a lot, and have a wonderful day wherever you are. Take care.